All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Emily. I'm the graduate assistant for the Theology department here at John Carroll. And here we have Dr. Cary Dabney. He is professor of systematic theology at Walsh University, specializing in Catholic moral theology, Christology, and American Catholicism. In 2022, he was appointed chair of the Board of Trustees for St. Mary's Seminary and Borromeo Graduate School of Theology by Bishop Malesic. Dr. Dabney holds a BA in Philosophy and Religious Studies with a minor in Interdisciplinary Greek Language Studies from Youngstown State University, a Master of Divinity from Harvard University's Divinity School, and a doctorate in Systematic Theology from Duquesne University. He also holds a catechetical certification from St. John Catholic Seminary in the Archdiocese of Boston. Prior to his appointment at Walsh University, Dr. Dabney served in lay ministry and community leadership for nearly a decade in various dioceses, parishes, and urban communities, including 3 years as the director of the Office of Ministry to African American Catholics in the Diocese of Cleveland, 3 years as a Master Catechist in the Diocese of Pittsburgh, and 2 years as the director of faith formation at St. Teresa of Calcutta Parish in Boston. He served as a consultant and writer for the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops Ad Hoc Committee Against Racism and is currently a member of St. Agnes and Our Lady of Fatima Parish in Cleveland. Welcome, Dr. Cary Dabney.
I gotta be honest, every time I give a talk and they read all of that off, I'm like, that dude did a lot of work. I don't know how he did that with 6 kids and 9 grandkids, but here I am. All right, so we only have an hour. So I'm gonna jump right into this, okay? So first thing we're gonna do is I wanna have a little bit of a thought experiment. I want you to look at the screen, and I want you to answer this question below. Looking at these 2 breeds of dogs, which breed of dog is more likely aggressive? A pit bull or a Labrador? How many of you would say, by show of hands, a pit bull? Why? This is the part where you speak. This is it's not a rhetorical question. Why? What are some of the reasons why? So they have a reputation, okay?
Because people who are looking for guard dogs are more likely to have pit bulls.
So there's something out there in the atmosphere of a reputation of a pit bull being more aggressive, right? So there's an availability of information out there that we pull off of and we come to a conclusion. That's one reason. What's another reason why? Is anybody here would say not a pit bull but a Labrador? Why?
Maybe the owners assume their dog is a good dog, and so they're less cautious or less likely to control or train their dog, and so the dog's instincts are unchecked.
So there's let me get what you're saying. You don't know which one because it depends on the owner of the dog, right? So then that means that there's some type of personal connection to the actual dog that can determine whether it's aggressive or not. So we got availability that's out there, information that's out there that draws us to a conclusion. Oh, I gotta walk. That's safe. I like to walk, so make sure don't nobody let me walk away from this spot. She was like, don't move. All right, so you have availability of information that's out there, right? We have a personal instruction. What's another reason why? Other people rose their hand about a lab. That a lab. I saw hands pop up, and I said, who would say?
Experience.
Experience,
if
right?
You've been around labs that could have been super excited, could be identified as friendly, or even, panting and maybe a little bit more aggressive. You might look at labs that, no, those are the ones I don't want to be around. Whereas if you never cross paths with a pit bull, you can't really say, oh yeah, those are definitely ones.
Does anybody remember the show 18? And remember when Hannibal used to be like, I love when a plan come together? Y'all making my plan come together. So, but the point I'm trying to make is, we have information that's out there that draws us to a conclusion, or we have the consideration of, I guess you want to say, encounter, and then you have personal representative. These are 3 different areas, 3 different, I guess you want to say, encounters with these animals that come to a conclusion. What's the data say? Whether you believe it or not, PETA says that they have more reports of bites on human persons by Labradors than they do pit bulls. In fact, that's the reason why they use pit bulls in fighting rings, because that's when they don't bite. The people who are handling them. They can get them to stop immediately, and they don't turn on the people. What they do is they're protective of each other. Does that make sense, right? So the point I want to say is, and just so you know, because I like to give history, I don't know who that dog is on the left. I just took that photo off of Google. But that dog on the right, that's my dog. His name is LeBron. And yes, he is named after the LeBron James, right? Now, I got him, I have a fellow classmate from Harvard here. When I went away to Harvard, my wife and children stayed home. And so, me, I said, I'm going to get myself a dog to protect my family. And again, going off that information that's out there, I created in my mind this idea, I need to get a pit bull. He might look vicious, but maybe there's not a vicious bone in his body. Let's just say, if I was to gamble on that, I would have lost my shirt. He has no aggression whatsoever, okay? Except maybe the occasional squirrel until it turns around, all right? So he has no aggression whatsoever. So again, I came to a false conclusion, right? So we do that. We as human persons, we sometimes come to assumptions and conclusions. I'm gonna do one more thing here. I want you to watch a video. Let's pray that this works. And I want you to watch this video, and then we're gonna talk about it and get some thoughts about it. Y'all hear browse?
Yeah.
You see this and you wonder, did he lose his keys or is he blatantly stealing that bike? In broad daylight, he hammers and then saws on the chain. When that doesn't work, he pulls out an industrial-sized bolt cutter. And when he's asked, he fesses up.
You lost the lock?
No, not exactly.
But he's not a real thief. Justin Kelly is an actor, and our hidden cameras are rolling.
What happened? Nothing. I can't get through the lock. I mean, I know this is weird, but you wouldn't happen to know whose bike this is, would you?
No.
All right, good. Thank you.
It was odd that somebody had all that equipment.
But you didn't do anything.
No.
That's true.
That's the bottom line.
Lots of people stop and stare. A few even question the actor.
I guess I have to ask, is that your bike?
I guess technically no.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Good luck.
In over an hour, about 100 people pass by. Only George and Arlene try to stop him. Some tell us they plan to call the police later. Others say they're scared. Keep moving. This woman and her friends give our thief the benefit of the doubt. When we ask why, Bisa Washington tells us first impressions matter.
I remember thinking young white men don't usually carry burglar tools.
So we all make assumptions, huh?
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe he works for the park.
We replace our white thief with this young man, Matlock. Remember, both actors dress in a similar way and are about the same age.
Is that your bike?
Nah.
Then what are you cutting the chain for?
Right away. Right away, somebody yelled. Wow.
Within seconds, another person confronts our thief.
Is that your bike?
Technically, it's not, but it's gonna be mine.
More people converge.
Is that on the cell phone? You call the police? He's like stealing somebody's bike.
Are you taking that bike? Is that your bike?
No, it's not, sir.
Oh, why are you doing that?
Is this any of y'all bikes? Is this your bike?
It's not. It belongs.
No, but
whoever's it is, it belongs to someone.
To who?
Well, not to you.
And sure enough, one man whips out a cell phone to call 911.
Yeah, there's someone taking a bike here.
Our actor triggers more reaction. Some people are even snapping pictures for evidence.
I got you, bud. I got you.
Guy's stealing the bike. Whose bike's over here?
Once everyone moves away, we reset our cameras, and within minutes, another outraged man is yelling.
Are you trying to steal that bike?
Excuse me, sir, but the bike's been here for days. Like, no one's gonna take it.
Well, that's not your bike then.
Yeah.
You can't just come in and take something from somebody.
Excuse me, sir. I'm
Okay, I'll just take your tools away then. This yours, sir?
Please, sir, don't touch my stuff, sir. Please, sir, do not touch my stuff.
Well, you're touching
please.
somebody else's stuff.
Yeah, all right, but this has been here. Like, who's gonna take it?
Well, that doesn't make it your property.
Technically, it does.
No, it doesn't technically. It's not yours to take.
All right, sir.
When we bring out our cameras, David Robb wants us to go after the thief.
That kid in the red shirt.
He's hacking away at a bike that's not his.
Days, and he has a right to take it and steal it. And he's come here with...
She may not look like your average bike thief, but actress Ashley Carpenter makes sure anyone who asks knows she's up to no good.
Need a hand?
You don't know whose this is, do you?
Whose bike it is?
Yeah.
With a little help from Ed Fitzsimmons, the bike chain easily falls away.
Drop everywhere. Oh my goodness, what a strong man you are.
And he isn't the only man who stops in his tracks. What's this guy thinking?
You know, you pull up, you don't know if she lost her key, if she's trying to actually take the bike, but then again, she's a girl. And would you ever see a girl doing that?
Steal?
You never know. Most of the times, it's a guy going to do something like that.
Reginald pedals right past his appalled wife, straight to our actress, asking her if she needs a hand.
Okay, I'll eventually get it.
I did some time in Rollway. I can steal this.
Oh, you can steal it? Maybe you can help me steal it.
All right, so just real quick, give me some of your thoughts about the video you just saw. Just what jumped out to you?
The viciousness the moment someone spoke to the black man.
Yeah.
So you had like this group effect, right? You had this group effect that happened versus when you had his counterpart, white person beforehand. What's something else that jumped out?
He admits it, and they're like, oh, okay, all right, whatever.
He flat out said, "Hey, my bike." Right, okay.
That's what I was gonna say too. But like the blatancy of the thieves. I know they were actors, but like, yeah, no, it's not mine. And the still like literally helping her cut the chain off or doing things like that.
The excuses that people were willing to make for the white guy and the woman that they did not hurt.
Did anyone, to jump on that, did anyone notice even the people of color who saw the white individual attempting to steal the bike, what did they say when they were asked about it?
Well, he just assumed because he was white that he wouldn't do it.
Right, he ain't stealing. He can't be stealing because he's white. And they're persons of color. That is weird to me. That's weird. Now, what about the young lady? Normally I stop the video between the two gentlemen, but I had to keep going with the young lady, right? What was something that jumped out to you about the young lady when she was trying to steal?
They're offering to help her.
They actually helping in grand larceny. Like they actually are walking up like, I can steal it, right? The one guy is cracked up. He drives right past his wife who was there and says, I've been locked up before. So he telling his whole business, right? All right, so why did I show these? Why do we talk about this? Because I want to point out that even though I'm going to introduce to you very briefly an alternative DEI, when I point out, and I'm going to talk about some of the concerns with DEI, the way it has been implemented recently, or within recent years, I'm not negating the fact that we all recognize that we do have, even in the most conscious settings, there's certain biases that we have to work against ourselves. We have to acknowledge that, okay? There are certain biases we may have, certain assumptions that we may have, and even though it's a dirty word and we don't like to say it, we have to be honest with ourselves, there's certain prejudices that we have, okay? Because the moment we come out of our mother's womb, we're formed a particular way. And even though it's always to our best, or at least the attempt is to our best, we come out of that with some assumptions. So we recognize that there is some work we have to do when we work in a school setting, and we know we're going to be in diverse settings. We know we have to do something to ensure that we're bringing the community together, even though we have these assumptions, these biases, and these prejudices. Now, over the course of the years, it has been through the process of diversity, equity, and inclusion, these initiatives that have taken place in an effort to create environments that are inclusive. In the first days of his second term as president, President Trump signed 2 key executive orders that directly addressed DEI programs. First was Executive Order 14151, ending radical and wasteful government DEI programs and preferencing. And the second was Executive Order 141173, ending illegal discrimination and restoring merit-based opportunity. These were 2 key executive orders that were to eliminate all DEI programs from the federal government and discourage the use of such programs in the private sector. Now, initially, when these were written, quite frankly, people began to lose their mind. Because the thought process was, oh my God, President Trump is trying to roll back civil rights. He's encouraging discriminatory practices in the workplace, and he's reducing the opportunity for marginalized persons. Now, I'm not here to talk propaganda on either side of the aisle, but those of us who work in school systems with children, we have to admit that this has affected the way we conduct our business in school. So regardless of what side of the aisle you sit on, we are forced to look at how we handle the diversity within our classrooms differently. So what I want to do in this brief amount of time is I want to try to define what I believe DEI is and identify what the issues are, and then share with you an alternative. An alternative that I believe that our Christian tradition offers that actually is more in line with what DEI is trying to accomplish. So first, let's define what DEI is. When we say diversity, we just did 2 exercises. We have to acknowledge that there are differences among human beings that fall into 1 or 2 categories. Either these differences are objectively observable, meaning things like race, age, biological sex, etc., or they are differences that are known by self-identification or self-disclosure. Things like country of origin, religion, socioeconomic status, sexual attraction. These differences or these diversities are what inclusion and equity in this model is trying to respond to. All right? Inclusion. Inclusion is the attempt to solve the tension that comes when 2 diversities interact with each other. All right? When these 2 diversities interact with each other in society, an institution like our schools will seek to be inclusive. Meaning inclusion is the goal to include these diversities and working together. This brings us to equity. If inclusion describes what to do with the problem of diversity, equity describes 2 things. First, the means or the how to achieve that inclusive community. And second, the standard or the measurement that defines the maximum empowerment by everyone in the community. In other words, equity is when everyone in the community has the same, or attempts to have the same benefits, has the same resources to operate within the community. Now, that all sounds really good, but there's a problem. And this is the problem. How should communities establish that baseline? What types of diversity is entitled to the preference? Does that make sense? Like how are we dividing the community up? Is it height and weight? Is it being bald? No offense to some of the people here. Is it having green eyes? Is it being vegan? In other words, the question is, how do we determine in the DEI model who's entitled to the preference? The only way to do this, according to a DEI model, ironically, is not to be inclusive, but to be exclusive. What do I mean? Well, remember, a portion of diversity is how you self-identify. So, according to this model, in order to be entitled to the preference, you have to be identified as a group that is exclusive from the larger group. And then you identify that group, and then you say, okay, that group has primacy and is given benefits and resources exclusatory to the larger group. So DEI, even though its effort is to be inclusive, it actually is a work of exclusion. Right? And that's the problem. Because quite frankly, even though it is not intentional, it violates the idea of human dignity for all human persons. Because no longer are people treated equally, they're identified and given a particular lens through which to see that particular group. Does that make sense? Now, pointing out, I want to say this, and I say this in all sincerity as a person of color, pointing out the issues or the concerns with the DEI model, I'm not stating or rejecting the existence of present-day unjust discrimination. It does exist. Okay? Nor am I ignoring the past unjust discrimination that has resulted in certain, I hate using the word, but certain benefits for some communities over others economically and with opportunity. I'm not saying that those don't exist. It does. However, as a Christian institution, as a Catholic institution, we can't use an exclusatory model in the effort to balance out the benefits and resources. So what I have for you today is an alternative. And that alternative is humility. Now let me ask a question real quick. If I say, define to me what is humility, how would you define it? Being humble. What's the definition of that?
Being grounded. Being grounded.
Being grounded.
Thinking less of yourself than others.
Thinking less of yourself. Father?
Knowing what I know and knowing what I don't know.
Knowing what I know, knowing what I don't know. Right, so there's a vulnerability that's there, right? Father?
I would say seeing ourselves as God sees us.
Seeing ourselves as God sees us.
Allowing ourselves to be less so that others can be more. Like making space for others.
Making space for others. You'll see why I hesitated when you say that. Obviously, as Christians, what is our greatest example? Jesus. I always tell students in my class, when they don't know the answer to something, just say Jesus. Because I can't say that's the wrong answer. Like, it doesn't matter what I say, I can't say that's the wrong answer, right? So Jesus. If we look at a letter by the Apostle Paul in the book of Philippians, notice what he says. He says, have among yourselves the same attitude that is also yours in Christ Jesus, who though he was in the form of God, he humbled himself, becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. One of the sayings that I absolutely hate is when people say, what would Jesus do? I hate that saying because I like the saying, what did Jesus do? Not what would he do? What did he do? Right? Because he was here. All right? So if we're talking about humility, what are some of the things St. Paul says that Jesus humbled himself. When we think about Jesus' humility, what are some of the things we think about? How did Jesus humble himself? In what ways?
He visited the sick.
He visited the sick, which in that society, how significant is that? Huge, right? Because the sick were like, you can't be here. Like, you cannot be part of society, right? So he had what's the Catholic way of saying it? He had a preferential option for the most vulnerable. So
washing feet.
Wash his feet, right? Which back then, I mean, even now, I'm sorry, I'm not a foot person, so even now it's nasty. I couldn't imagine back then when he had sandals on, right? So he clearly, right? So those are some of the things that he did was humble. What's something else major that he did was humble?
He would cure people and say, don't tell anybody.
Don't tell anybody. It's not about me. It's your faith. There's something real big that no one's mentioning.
He listened to women.
So that would have been a radical at that moment, right? I mean, I don't care what gospel you read, who was the first one to say Jesus rose? Mary Magdalene. That was the testimony of a woman, right?
He died on the cross.
Say more about that.
Pretty humble, I would say.
He died on the cross.
He pretty much just exposed himself to all the world. And
Yeah, because you guys do understand that the nice image that we have of Jesus with the covering, that ain't what it would have been like back then, right? We do that now because we don't need to, but back then it was completely exposed, right? And what's the significance of that?
He gave his life.
He gave his life, and he's God. So a lot of times it's easy for us to think about Jesus and his holiness and divinity, but we forget he came down here to our mess, right? He forever connected himself with us. So if we think about God, Jesus, in the flesh, the one with the Father and the Holy Spirit, created everything in existence. Yet, if we read through Scripture, no one was afraid to come up to him and speak to him, except the demons. Other than the demons, when people came to him, even children approached him. Which meant, when they left, they felt, think about the way he taught, asking questions, right? He felt, his disciples felt empowered when they walked away from him, even though he was God. And even though he was God, how many times we read in Scripture that he was committed to learning? He asked questions, right? Because it's part of the human experience. Even though he's God, he had a commitment to learning. He never said anywhere in Scripture, I've arrived. He still asked questions. And obviously we've talked about he had an inclination for those who are most vulnerable. But notice in all of that, because we're all teachers here, right? In all of that, did he ever give up any authority? He never gave up authority. The question never was who's Lord. He always had the authority, even though he empowered others. He was always asking questions, and he always made sure he had an ear out for what voice was not included. That's humility. I like the way C.S. Lewis defines humility on the screen there. It says, humility is not thinking less of yourself, but is thinking of yourself less. He just obviously never questioned who he was, but he always made sure that his followers were before him. That's humility. Imagine if we had this culture of humility in our schools. Would you need DEI? If every student that you encountered, you had a commitment of learning from them. You don't give them any authority, but each individual student you speak to, guess what you can learn? You can learn from their experience. You can learn from the conversation, and having them part of the solution empowers them. You still got the authority, right? But you're moving away the perceived the power balances. Because you know, as soon as a student walks in, who the teacher is, they immediately are going to have some ideas about how this conversation is going to go. Especially if you're the type of teacher that's got a reputation. I hope y'all know they're talking about y'all in the hallways, right? So they walk in, they already got an idea of who you're going to be. Humility would be to disperse those perceived and power imbalances. That's just the first part, though. Because all of you are part of a larger team, part of a larger unit, right? So it's not just you yourself, I'm going to try to be a humble person. That's great. But part of the institution, you want to create a culture of humility. Now, what do we mean by culture? What does culture mean? What is culture? What is it?
Learned behavior.
Learned behavior? When you think, see, some of these words aren't, we use them all the time, but some of them you got to think about, like, wait a minute, what am I saying, right? What is culture?
The norms and expectations we have of each other.
So the norms and expectations that we set in the community, right?
Relational.
Relationships.
It's a social binding.
Social binding in a group or community. Like it.
It's any creation of the community's like self-expression or production or economic.
How are these traditions, how are these values, how are they expressed?
Some are expressed really like openly, like policies and rules, and some are unspoken. They're like unwritten rules.
Correct. So there are certain unwritten rules or unwritten values. But don't think about school right now. Just think about communities in general, cultures in general. In what ways do they transmit values without articulating? How do you know a certain value from a community?
Shared experience again.
Shared experiences. You guys are being way too intellectual.
Oh, okay.
How do you know something about a community?
What they spend their time and money on?
What they spend their time and money on? Like what? What type of things? Let me ask it this way. How do I know? If I cruise a lot. Me and my wife are big time cruisers. We go at least 2 cruises a year, minimum. Yes, anybody who has classes with me, come December, I always tell them, have your stuff in because I'm on a cruise by December 15th. I'm gone, right? They know every single year, right? How do I know when I step off the boat? If I would not have known, didn't hear what island I'm at, when I step off the boat, how do I know where I am? What type of things am I looking for?
Music, food.
Music, food,
language,
is a piece. Clothing. Culture is expressed in a variety of different ways. Okay? Whether it's behavior, whether it's our faith traditions, it's food, it's rituals, right? It's music, it's art. All of these things communicate something that is valuable in the life of that community. What I'm offering as a suggestion here is that in your institutions, that you develop a culture of humility. So in other words, you express how valuable humility is and the virtue of humility is by developing the culture in the institution. How do we do that? There's 3 tenets that I point out of at least starting to develop this culture of humility. First, like Jesus, who humbled himself, you have a commitment to learning. You never arrive. And as educators, that should be something we are passionate about anyway. I know that a lot of us got a bunch of papers that hang on our walls and letters after our names, but you never stop learning. Not only just in your field, but in your encounter with each individual student, you can learn something. And if we have that commitment to learning, instead of trying to solve the student or solve the problem, guess what we're trying to do together? We're trying to learn together. That's humility. And if the student is engaged in that learning, guess what? They feel that they're a part of the learning as well. And they feel empowered. Second, you always have an awareness of those who are most vulnerable or on the margins. In today's world, they like to emphasize, when you say someone who's on the margins, on more that observable diversities. And it is included with race, sexual attraction, things of that nature. But I want you to think beyond that. When I say those on the margins, who's the student that never says anything? We all know we got classrooms where you got students that talk all the time. Every time you ask a question, the first one's raise their hand, right? Who's the one that never says anything? You want to engage them. That's humility. Ask them how they're doing. All right? You got to be a little bit crafty sometimes. Maybe, like what I do, now this is at the university level, but what I do is I tell them ahead of time, they got a little name plate. I do old school name plates. You put name plates, you put it in front of you. I'm calling your name to make sure that you're included in the conversation. I let them know ahead of time. You're not going to just sit in the corner and not say anything. I want to know what you're thinking, right? But it's not just necessary in a classroom setting. Think about the students that you never get the high five from in the hallway. They never seem to be excited about the football game. They never seem to be excited about the pep rally. right? If you want to build a culture of humility, that means you're looking out for them as well. Does that make sense? And you're extending an invitation to them. Just conversation. And then lastly, and what I think is most important, is you want to redistribute the perceived power imbalances. You want to make sure that you're empowering your students. And I know, I've never taught at the high school level, but I know I have taught confirmation. And trying to get kids at that age to have a conversation, it's almost like they think it's not cool to have a conversation. The meanest face they can make, that's the coolest person in the class, right? It's hard. But we want to pull that out of them because, and I know sometimes it's the curriculum, right? Sometimes we're a prison to the curriculum. They have to regurgitate what we tell them. So a lot of times they're just trying to memorize what we're saying and then say it right back to us so they can get that A so I can move on to the next class, right? We may ask for us to be a little bit more creative because we want them to be part of the curriculum, we want them to be part of the daily life. Because if you do that, that empowers them, makes them feel like they're part of the community. I probably shouldn't do this, but 2 of my sons attend St. Edward High School. Well, one graduated. And I can tell you 100% the difference between, because we transfer, the difference between a student who doesn't feel empowered and feel like they're just being talked to, and one who's actually contributing to their education. It is completely different. I have people here who had my older son, who was a complete introvert. I had written him off as an introvert. The kid don't just talk, he just don't talk. He went there where they were empowering students to have part of their education. I kind of wish he would revert. Because now he talked a little bit too much. He wanted a little bit too empowerment, with his father, But the point is, in all seriousness, if we develop this culture of humility, you're still getting the same ends that DEI is trying to attempt. But guess what? Instead of it being divisive and exclusory, it's actually bringing everyone together. Does that make sense? If you want to visualize it, I actually took this from a friend of mine, named Dr. James Knight. This is a visualization of what developing a culture of humility in your institutions would be. Now, if you notice, it's a circle. Why did I think we made it a circle?
It's like the Dunning-Kruger effect, like you're going to have the peaks and the valleys as you grow.
Right, so you never arrive, right? There's no end point. It just keeps, it's an infinite progress, right? So we start off with what we talked about today. As educators, we become self-aware of the fact that there are biases that exist. Okay? We have prejudices. And once we understand that we all have unique views, including our students have unique views, then we can begin to that learning process of learning how they react. How is it that they can feel empowered in any situation, whether it's curriculum, whether it's in the hallway, whether it's extracurricular activity, whatever the case may be. And then together, we can all model what DEI is trying to achieve, which is that dignity for all human persons within our communities. That's being humble. But the thing is, guess what? Every time you do this and you learn something new, the process starts right back over again. Right? And that's what we want to do. We want it to overflow in our communities. Now's the time for questions. I purposely left 20 minutes for questions. Okay?
First, thank you.
Very well.
Thank you.
First, let me give some history. JB and I were graduate students together. So whatever he's about to say, only believe the question, not any stories.
Well, in that case, I'll cut to it.
Right.
I'm curious how we invite our students into this. Because let's be honest, if our entire staff, our entire faculty, even our coaches have this humble framework, there still will be some foreign culture And I'm using foreign, although we know it's pervasive, it's here. So,
So-
and then even in the church, you know? So how do we help them to truly say, okay, I want to empower others who are not empowered, versus just saying, look, I'm empowering. Who cares that they're over-empowered? You asked me to empower.
So the first thing I would say, that there has to be some measurables that are there. I gave most of you here, if you didn't have it, you can come get it afterward. I did purposely leave my card with each and every one of you. Because what we have done, myself and Dr. Knight have done, is we have actually went into schools who sincerely want to work on how to develop this culture of humility. And it all starts off with, to be honest with you, you gotta have professional development, and you have to have, the staff has to be bought in first. There's no way you can go in single as just one person and develop this, because it's a culture, which means that institution, that school is working to develop a culture. Remember, culture is whatever values and traditions are important to that institution, right? So it always starts off with just professional development. How can you actually implement it amongst each other first? Because if the staff, quite frankly, can't work with each other with humility, how do you possibly plan on modeling that to the student body? So that's the first step. And then the second step is we actually do, at high school level, we don't do it so much at the elementary level, but the high school level, we actually have conversations with the students. We ask the students. There's a series of questions that we ask. We just ask the students about their reflection. How do they feel? What are their thought processes? And from that, we go back to the staff. Hey, this is what your student body is saying. So to let you know, it is a process. I'm not saying it's something you all will go home or go to your schools and be like, all right, we have a culture of humility. No, it's going to take a work. Because anytime you build a culture, it takes time to build it. Right? So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but it has to be a commitment from everyone to do so. But you got to do something, because what I didn't bring up is at the same time that President Trump did these 2 executive orders, he also did an executive order of increasing the support of school of choice, which means we already have, how many here have seen the demographics change in their schools since they first started? It's going to change even more, which means more diversities are going to come into the institutions. So if the diversities are coming in, but the DEI programs are being discouraged, you got to do something. Like you can't just be like, well, we just gonna bump into each other. No, we got to do something, right? And so that's why I talk about it and get in front of it now.
So I work at Magnificat High School, which is one of our core values is humility. We are sponsored by the Sisters of the Humility of Mary. So that's a big piece of what we talk about at the school. And I think a culture of humility is really valuable. But what I think I'm missing in this model is the equity piece that has to do with access to resources. Like, if we haven't taken our staff salaries and looked at them through a lens of equity, then we might be at risk of, having a lot of inequities in salaries of people doing the same job but being paid differently for the same work. That kind of thing that's sort of at the core of structural equity work. How do you get to that through a model of humility? Because I think you could, but it's not obvious to me.
The only way to do that is to really, again, this will have to be at an intentional level at each institution. When you start talking about benefits and money, people get like,
right.
Don't mess with my bag. But which is a reality.
Or access to scholarships, right, for students. That kind of access. The equity model says we look at what people have and we try to balance out in a way that's fair and takes into account history and individual circumstance. I wonder about that piece.
Well, I don't think, because if you think, I'll go back. If you look at the tenets, you still have an inclination to those who are most vulnerable, right? But having an inclination to most vulnerable, this is my understanding, or this what I think, it's not so much exclusatory as much as you want them to be part of the larger community and be able to participate. It's no different than someone that may have a disability and they need accommodations, right? We don't say to the person, well, you shouldn't really say, to the person who has accommodations, say, well, you getting unfair treatment because you get more time on a test, you're being excluded from me. That's not, right? We want them to be able to be part of the larger portion. So I think a lot of that could be semantics, it could be language, and we may act like that's just language. Language is important, because guess what? That's how we communicate as human persons, right? So I think we could address that by simply using language that is not exclusatory, but say this is here so that we can bring them in more, if that makes sense, right? We have the principle in the book of Acts of the first century Christians who took everything that they had and they had it in common. You're always going to have, what did Jesus say? You're always going to have the poor among you, right? But guess what? If the poorest person, I mean, I'm talking basic Catholic social teaching, right? If the poorest person is able to engage and be active in the community, it enriches the whole community. So it should be something that we all want to have part of, not looking at it as we're identifying a group that needs our help. No, we want them to come with us, and this is what we need to do to get them with us, if that makes sense. It's language.
I got someone on Zoom with a question.
Oh, okay.
Or someone up there with a question.
What am I supposed to look? Am I supposed to look somewhere?
Camera's up there.
All right, I'm looking. That's the question.
All right, so this says, I teach high school seniors, and yes, most are concerned about the grade and not thinking on their own. What are some ways, if any, to create in them a desire to learn? The tablets and phones have robbed them of their ability to really think.
This is going to sound crazy. Use the tablets and phones. What I mean by that is, right now, at a university level, this isn't just high school, by the way. Even at a university level, when they first come in, if they don't have a screen in front of their face, they have a hard time sitting there, right? So what I do is actually use the phone. I would literally say, okay, whatever we're talking about, I would say, all right, everybody put your phones out. Now, I guess schools have certain, you got to lock the phones up, whatever the case may be, right? Because sometimes out of your head, like, thank God, we had one day. But I say, I'll just give an example. I'll be in class and I'll talk about something, and I'll say, I want you to pull out your phones, tablets, whatever, because in university, they got the screen in front of them. They look like they're doing students doing notes. They're not doing notes. They're looking at Facebook or something else that they're looking at. I'll say, I want you to pull up, I'll use an example, TikTok, which already they're like, ooh, I want to pull it up. So I pull it up, and I'll say, put a topic in TikTok and hit search. Because of their individual algorithms, different things are going to come up, right? And we have a conversation about what has just come up on your phone. After what I've talked about in class, let them see, funny what Father Dunn was talking about earlier today, that what is in front of them on TikTok is not what we just talked about in class. So I guess using their equipment, and I know I'm hesitating because I already hear my son always tells me, you can't text me, Dad, when I'm at home or when I'm at school because they make us lock it up. So that's it. But using their equipment in some way, whether it's in a homework assignment, for example, on the whole thing, the ChatGPT thing, I assigned them to go to ChatGPT. First of all, I already went. So I already know what it's going to punch out to me, so don't be trying that. But have them use that equipment so that they can, again, they feel like they're empowered with what they have and part of their curriculum. That would be my suggestion. Father.
Thank you, Dr. Dabney, for what you shared. So I belong to the Jesuit Order, the Society of Jesus, like Father Donovan does, and we've tried to develop in recent years, something along the same lines. We frame it a little differently, but it's the same, basically, gospel values and trying to create that culture. And as you said, it's a long game. Here's my question. It's an honest question I have for you. I don't know what the answer is for this, but something that has come up at our school, Walsh Jesuit High School, conversations with our E&I folks, do you feel that kind of, I don't know, the goal, or maybe it's at some point there is no E&I space, because one might argue that it will always be helpful regardless to have a space where folks of a certain culture with certain experiences that are shared can come together and say, here's some people that understand me in a way that the others won't. Now, I'm right with you on the divisive part that you laid out in the beginning. I'm with you on that. But the fact of the matter is, as you pointed out, we do come from different cultures. And so it's an honest question. Do you see that there could always be use for, I don't know, help to have spaces where certain people, and not exclusive spaces, anyone can go in there, but certainly folks that feel particularly comfortable or identify with a specific group?
Absolutely. Normally, typically those groups, they're always headed by someone who's either part of faculty or staff, right?
Yes.
And so those who are supervising those groups, I think, simply want to ensure that whatever thread is holding the institution together is still part of that group, if that makes sense. The example I like to come up with is the Mass. It always comes back to the Mass, right? And obviously you can go to a Mass. I got time, I can tell this story. So when I first got hired, I used to work for the Diocese of Cleveland as director of Office of African American Catholics. I actually came into the faith, because I'm a convert, I came into the faith in the Diocese of Youngstown. Diocese of Youngstown, for the most part, the parishes are pretty, anybody here from Youngstown? Good. All right, so oh man, it's being recorded though. But anyway, so all the parishes in the Diocese of Youngstown are pretty much, they're your traditional Mass. All right? There's no real cultural expression in the Mass in Youngstown, and that's where I came up. So I'm thinking, I had this one picture of what the Catholic experience is. I go to the Diocese of Cleveland and start working. The first parish that they sent me to is a parish called St. Agnes Our Lady of Fatima, which I'm a part of now. And when I first got there, I sat down. Now, what normally happens with Mass? What happens? How do you know Mass is about to start? What happens? Okay, I'm assuming y'all go to Mass. What happens at Mass? How do you know Mass is about to start?
Opening hymn.
You have to open the hymn, but even before the hymn, what happened? What normally happens?
Ring the bells.
There's a bell that rings, right? Ding! Okay, time to stand up. The hymn is about to start, and the procession is about to start. Oh no, not at St. Agnes Our Lady of Fatima. St. Agnes Our Lady of Fatima is a parish that is historically Afrocentric and Hispanic and brought together. That's why it's St. Agnes Our Lady of Fatima, right? So when it first started, I've never been to a parish like this before. There was no bell. It was a drum. And then after the drum, and I don't mean, I mean like hand drums. And then after the drums, praise worshipers started coming down the aisle, dancing, with a bowl of incense. Let me tell you something. I got up, went outside, and I'm not exaggerating, to make sure I was at the right address. It was one of those corners that got a lot of churches. I went outside, I was like, man, I say Catholic. This Lady of Fatima right there. I guess it's the right place. I came back inside, and I mean, when okay? My point is this. It's a parish that is you purposely, intentionally there for that community, but there's also the same thread that ties all of us together. You see what I'm saying? Like, you clearly know it's a Mass, right? The responses are the same, the liturgy is the same, it just has some allowable cultural expressions before and after the Mass, right? So I think that you can have the groups. I think the groups are important, because clearly there's some conversation that can take place within the faith that are going to be unique to that group. But you always want to remember that we're part of a larger body. We're not exclusive to ourselves. All of this work, this conversation we're having, is to bring us together, not to further identify us separate from everyone else. Is that makes sense? Thank you. I'm paranoid, they call me. We have a history. And I just said something about the Mass, so I'm paranoid. Okay, go ahead. No, go ahead.
So this might be a devil's advocate question. In the humility model, how does it account for conflict on fundamentals? So I'll tell you a story, and this is why I'm thinking about it. 5 years ago, I had a student. She asked me, "Why does the church hate gay people?" I said, "Well, the church doesn't hate gay people. Everyone's invited, et cetera, et cetera." Her follow-up was, "Why doesn't the church permit gay marriage?" And we kind of walked through that. And when she didn't get the answer she wanted from her cultural disposition, she was suspicious. nothing else I could have said. So does the humility model depend on humility on both sides? How could it foster that?
It does, I guess you want to say, you want to work towards humility on both sides. Because remember, both sides, the idea is that we're not thinking of ourselves, but we're thinking about the others. But in a specific classroom, I won't say classroom, in an education situation, the responsibility is heavier on the educator than it is the student. All right? So there could be a point where when the rubber meets the road in this particular situation, there's a difference between embracing their moral axiom and embracing them as a person, right? So you still want to walk with them with these tenets. That's still the culture of humility. But sometimes you're going to walk side by side, but never come to the same conclusion. If that makes sense.
Sure.
And so you have to recognize that's going to happen, but you also have to recognize what I say in my classrooms. There may be a tension there, but that tension is not going to change the dignity that you see in that person and that you're walking with them towards Christ. Cool. That's bad. That's what I guess.
I know James night as well, and I'm curious about your thoughts on ecumenism. You know, like, so when we have DEI, there's a person who's hired and then the staff and the community looks at that person, like inclusivity and diversity is their responsibility or their job. And I think sometimes in the classroom, you'll have minority students who feel like it's their job to answer for black people, or they feel like the teacher looks at them when racism comes up or something like that, and rarely look at them when we're talking about people who are Catholic.
Correct.
Don't think to look at the African American students Catholic. And so for me, like I'm teaching these junior sacraments and we're talking about, you know, the church's teaching on baptism and what we say about the people in the church being our brothers and sisters. I know that James is not a Catholic minister, so I'm wondering about your experience of ecumenism and how you represent the Catholic faith and your own faith, and at the same time work closely with James, who comes from a different tradition. Because he and I used to have long conversations. He was curious. He's like, why do Catholics do this? Why do Catholics think that? And you could have Cary Dabney, she was in those conversations too. And I think there's something valuable about that, you know. And I wonder about your experience of ecumenism and how we approach ecumenism from a perspective of cultural humility. How you do that?
Well, so again, mine is from a university setting, so it might be a little bit different. But I purposely encourage other, I'm not going to say just ecumenism, because we have a very large Muslim population at Walsh University too. So whatever the faith tradition is, I encourage them to speak on and include their specific perspective. So I'll give you an example. Even if I'm teaching a class because I teach a class on sacraments, I ask them, after I define what sacraments are, I don't presume to tell them what sacraments are for them. I just give the definition of what a sacrament is, and then I ask them to include, by this definition, what would be sacramental in your faith tradition. Does that make sense? So, and the reason why you do that, again, I'm trying to empower them. I don't want them to feel like they're being talked at, but they're participating. And quite frankly, if everybody in the classroom is committed to learning, I guarantee you other people in the classroom just learned something that they didn't know before as well. Does that make sense? So it's more of a, do we have a landing point? Now granted, university is a little bit more broad in the sense of where we land at, but you can still have a landing point of where you want to get at the end of the course, but still include that in the conversation and not presume. Do you see what I'm saying? So don't say, well, I have somebody who's from another faith tradition, and then tell them, well, this is what you guys think. No, let them, because certainly in ecumenical circles, we may think we know what that particular Protestant tradition believes, but guess what? You could be way off on what their particular encounter is within their tradition. Does that make sense? So I make it very conversational. That's my experience. But I also purposely, until people know me, Matt can attest to this, I purposely keep them on a swivel, because when they come to Walsh, they have in their mind what a theologian is supposed to look like, and it ain't me. So a lot of times in the beginning, I don't want them to know where I'm at, purposely. Now, I know it's a little bit difficult if you are a theology professor at a high school, but I try to play on that. Let them try to figure out where I am first, if that makes sense, because that generates conversation. Because they don't know. I don't want them to try to just say what I want to hear. I want to hear sincerely from them what they feel. So you got to, all of this, we have to be a little bit stronger in our craft as well. We can't sit back. How many here have been teaching for a long time? Well, guess what? I know, you're like, what is a long time? Depending on the class you got, could have been a year. Anyway, so, that was a long year. We have to continue, that's the commitment to learning. We have to continue to grow in our craft as well. We can't get complacent, like, well, I've been doing this for a long time, this is just how I'm gonna do it. Because guess what? Every generation is different. My oldest kid is 31 and my youngest is 14. They say the same word and it means completely different things. You know, so even as a parent, I'm like, I got to do this different with this one than I do with the one that's, you know, got the grandbabies. So, just so we're at 12 o'clock, I'm not holding anybody, so I don't know what the protocol is, but I also don't want to go if people still got questions. So
yeah, I mean, you're free to stay here. Also, if you're ready to go,
right.
The lunch is going to be right outside this door to the left.
We started with this idea that staff has to be brought in first, and the challenge, as I see it, among others, is if you have somebody who is obstinately opposed to not necessarily like the concept, but how they envision the concept will play out, and without that power imbalance of a sort, like, what authority do you have to tell me what to do because we're both teachers or whatever, like that sort of thing? How do you address, or how do you kind of?
You mean, so you're saying between the staff, between the staff, you mean?
Yeah, on the staff level.
I'll be honest, I don't have an answer to that because I'm not understanding how someone would want to work in an environment where we can't have the free interchange of thought between us as colleagues. Right. Now, are you saying authority in the classroom or the authority between each other?
I mean, like, if we're going to say, like, okay, we're going to have a PD on cultural humility, and the staff members who come into that room rolling their eyes and not ready to listen. And, like, again, yeah, you need the humility on both sides, but without the power imbalance of the student and teacher, sometimes that becomes harder to overcome.
So, first I'll answer it. I guess I'm a little confused because you keep saying student and teacher.
No, I'm just thinking because, like, from like the authority perspective.
See, to me, there's a difference between authority and a power imbalance.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we way too easily interchange power and authority. Okay. That's not the same thing, right? I can give my child power, but I still have authority. Right? I mean, Jesus empowered his disciples to do the works that he was doing, but no one questioned his authority. That's two different things, right? Yeah. Having power simply, maybe a better word would be having a sense of autonomy, right, in your learning experience. But the authority still resides in the teacher in the classroom. Right. It's the same thing, whatever the staff situation is. Whoever the principal is the principal. Like, I don't care how humble we trying to be. At the end of the day, the principal is the principal. Yeah. But guess what? We'll work better as a group if we are all empowered in some sense to, I guess you want to say, move the day along and do the operations, if that makes sense. There's less fear. What I mean by fear is not maybe morbid fear, but that fear to almost say the wrong thing, or the less tension is going to be there if I feel open to express, this is what my concerns are, and I'm not going to get barked at because I mentioned it. I don't know if that. And at the end of the day, if you're saying that, you're right, there's always going to be that 10%, we said in the Marine Corps, there's always that 10%, right? They're going to sit there like this with their arms folded when they are told to do anything, right? Yeah. That's where the measurables have to come into play. There has to be an intentional, this is what we're going to do, for those who are, as my mother used to say, the hard-headed ones, who just are, they're not going to buy in. Even if they like it, they're not going to buy in because if I buy in, I gave in somehow. Like, I don't, it sounds real good, but I don't want to give in. That's what the measure is for. Any other questions? Well, thank you. I hope you guys got something out of it.